And here we are starting at the 15th ayah. And so the author says, starting with the saying of Allah Ta'ala, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم هل أتاك حديث موسى. O Muhammad, has the story of Moses come to you? استفهام يتضمن التنبيه على أن هذا مما يشيع. This is a question, and this question has in it, incorporates an alert that this is something that should be spread. والتشريف للمخاطب به. And in this question, there is nobility for the one who's being questioned. This ayah, the question in this ayah, contains honoring the one who's being addressed, and that's the Prophet. Sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. إِذْ نَادَاهُ رَبُّهُ. When his Lord called him. حِينَ نَادَاهُ بِالْوَادِ الْمُقَدَّسِ. When he called him when he was in the holy valley. Al-Mubarak al-Mutahhar. The blessed, purified valley of Tuwa. Tuwa, that's its name, Ismuhu. Yani, when Moses received the revelation from his Lord while he was in the holy, blessed valley of Tuwa. اذهب إلى فرعون. Go to Pharaoh. على إرادة القول. Meaning, his Lord said to him, go to Pharaoh. But there's no mention of the saying. Yani, it doesn't say qala, so that's intended there. So benefit from that. Sometimes a statement has an implied citation. Sometimes a saying has an implied citation. But I know a lot of people, they can't figure that. They can't catch that or realize that. They can't catch that or realize that. So then ask if you don't catch it. But if you can understand how that goes, then know that that's a thing. There is in the Quran in several spots. So, اذهب إلى فرعون. Go to the Pharaoh. That's what Moses' Lord commanded him. إنه طغى. Indeed, he has transgressed. تجاوز الحد في الكفر والفساد. He has gone beyond the limits in blasphemy and corruption. فَقُلْ هَلْ لَكَ إِلَىٰ أَن تَزَكَّىٰ. And, O Moses, say to him, هَلْ لَكَ إِلَىٰ أَن تَزَكَّىٰ. هَلْ لَكَ مَيْلٌ إِلَىٰ أَن تَتَطَهَّرَ مِنَ الشِّرْكِ وَالْعِصْيَانِ بِالطَّاعَةِ وَالْإِيمَانِ. Say to him, O Moses, do you want to purify yourself? Do you want to purify yourself? Do you have an inclination to be cleared from paganism and disobedience by worshiping God and having faith? وبتشديد الزاي حجازي وأهديك إلى ربك وأرشدك إلى معرفة الله بذكر صفاته فتعرفه. And that I would guide you to your Lord. Do you like that I would guide you to your Lord? Meaning that I would guide you to know God by mentioning to you attributes of God, and then you would know about God. فَتَخْشَى, and then you would fear God. So he's saying, God told him, اذهب إلى فرعون. Oh Moses, go to Pharaoh. إنه طغى. Indeed, he has transgressed. Yani, he has committed so much blasphemy and corruption. فَقُلْ هَلْ لَكَ إِلَىٰ أَن تَزَكَّىٰ. And say to him, Moses, would you like to be purified? وَأَهْدِيَكَ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَتَخْشَىٰ. And that I would guide you to your Lord, yani, that I would guide you to know your Lord, and then you would fear him. لأن الخشية لا تكون إلا بالمعرفة, because fearing God would not be without knowing God. Like if someone doesn't know that God has power over everything, and that if God willed to destroy something, he would destroy it. And if God willed to bless one, he would bless that one. If someone knows about God, then he would be afraid of God as he should be. But if he doesn't, then he wouldn't. He wouldn't be afraid of God. He'd be afraid of the police. He'll be afraid of sickness and disease. He'd be afraid of poverty. He'll be afraid of everything. He'll be afraid of creations, but he won't be afraid of God. Allah says in another ayah of the Quran, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. Merely those who fear Allah from amongst his slaves are the scholars. And look here, أي العلماء به, meaning those who know about God. And look here at what Imam An-Nasafiyy has here in his book. He has this statement. He says, وَعَنْ بَعْضِ الْحُكَمَاء, it was reported from some of the wise ones, اعرفوا الله, know Allah. فَمَنْ عَرَفَ اللَّهَ لَمْ يَقْدِرْ أَنْ يَعْصِيَهُ طَرْفَةَ عَيْنٍ. Whoever knows Allah would not be able to disobey him for the blink of an eye. So Imam An-Nasafiyy, he reported that from some of the wise ones. He said, our Shaykh commented on this statement. What did he say? He said, هَذَا كَلَامٌ لَا مَعْنَى لَهُ. This talk is meaningless. This talk is meaningless. So that's a criticism here of the author. Why is meaningless? Because someone might know about God and still disobey him. Just because one does know God means he knows the attributes of God and he might believe in God properly, doesn't mean he won't disobey God. Even Iblis knows that. Satan himself knows who God is. He knows the attributes of God. How did Satan address God? He said, Rabbi, oh my Lord. That's how he addressed God. He's saying, oh, God of mine. That's Satan who said that. Satan. So, there, take a lesson there. فَالْخَشْيَةُ مِلَاكُ الْأُمُورِ. Having the fear of God is the best of matters. مَنْ خَشِيَ اللَّهَ أَتَى مِنْهُ كُلُّ خَيْرٍ. Who fears God, then there shall come from him every goodness. وَمَنْ أَمِنَ اجْتَرَأَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَرٍّ. And whoever feels safe from God will have the audacity to do any evil. If he doesn't fear God, then what will stop him from doing evil? وَمِنْهُ الْحَدِيث مَنْ خَافَ أَدْلَجَ وَمَنْ أَدْلَجَ بَلَغَ الْمَنْزِلَ. I didn't get to check that hadith. Someone needed something. I got distracted, so I wasn't able to check that hadith, subhanallah. So I can't explain it for you. بدأ مخاطبته بالاستفهام الذي معناه العرض. So what did Moses do? First, he started talking to the Pharaoh with a question, and his question was an offer. فَقُلْ هَلْ لَكَ إِلَىٰ أَن تَزَكَّىٰ. Would you like to purify yourself? Just like كَمَا يَقُولُ الرَّجُلُ لِضَيْفِهِ كَمَا يَقُولُ الرَّجُلُ لِضَيْفِهِ. Just like a man would say to his guest, هَلْ لَكَ أَن تَنزِلَ بِنَا. Would you like to visit us? Why don't you visit us? وَأَرْدَفَهُ الْكَلَامَ الرَّقِيقَ. And then he followed up that question that has an offer in it with gentle talk. لِيَسْتَدْعِيَهُ بِاللُّطْفِ فِي الْقَوْلِ. So that he could entice Pharaoh with gentle words, so that he could bring Pharaoh over to him, to his side. Yani, so that the Pharaoh would sympathize with Moses. وَيَسْتَنْزِلَهُ بِالْمُدَارَاتِ عَنْ عُتُوِّهِ. And so Moses talked to him with this soft talk, so to avoid the Pharaoh's arrogance and transgression and his misbehavior. This is not the best translations I'm giving you here, but yani, it's close. كما أمر بذلك في قوله تعالى. Just like in another verse of the Quran that mentions this story, when Allah says in commanding Moses, فَقُولَا لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا, commanding Moses and Aaron, say to him, the two of you, say to the Pharaoh, the two of you, a soft word. Speak to the Pharaoh gently. This Pharaoh is very, very arrogant man. How do you talk to someone who's haughty? You want to convince him about something, then you need to be mindful of your approach. Doesn't mean that you're a coward. It means you're being wise. You're trying to achieve your goal. فَأَرَاهُ الْآيَةَ الْكُبْرَى. And then Moses showed him the great sign. Question, does that ayah show that both Prophet Musa and Prophet Harun were sent to Pharaoh? Yes, it does. فَأَرَاهُ الْآيَةَ الْكُبْرَى. And then he showed him. Yani, then Moses showed Pharaoh the great sign. فَذَهَبَ, meaning, so Moses went. He fulfilled the command of his Lord. فَأَرَى مُوسَى فِرْعَوْنَ الْعَصَى. And then Moses showed Pharaoh the staff. أو العصا واليد البيضاء. Or he showed Pharaoh both the staff and the white hand. What does that mean? So Moses, what happened, Yani? You know that the story of Moses is distributed throughout the Quran in pieces. And the story of Moses, in fact, is the longest running story in the Quran. It's the longest running story in the Quran, but just broken into pieces. Some scholars said that as if the Quran, all of it is about Moses. Lots of the story of Moses is there. And there's repetition in different spots in different ayahs, but those different ayahs have different words also. So what do? You put them together. All the Quran is like one word. So if you want to learn the tafsir of Quran, may Allah enable us to learn the tafsir of the entire Quran. Ameen. All of that Quran, it all fits together. None of it is contradicting any of it. But when you see the same thing mentioned in different spots of the Quran, how do you treat that? By merging them. So the story of Moses and the Pharaoh is mentioned in more than one spot in the Quran. What happened was that Moses, he got the command to go to Egypt to meet up with his brother who got the revelation also, and then go to Pharaoh. So he met up with his brother, and the both of them went to the Pharaoh that's mentioned in the Quran. It's just that here in this spot, Aaron is not mentioned. When you put the other accounts of the story together, then you know that this story we're reading now, Aaron was there. It's just not mentioned here in this surah. They went there together, and then Moses talked to the Pharaoh, and then the Pharaoh recognized who he was. And he said, "Aren't you?" And then they had a conversation back and forth. And then Moses was refuting the Pharaoh, Yani, answering him. He was responding to whatever the Pharaoh said until the Pharaoh got bored of the dialogue and then resorted to his authority. And he said to Moses, "If you worship someone else other than me, I will imprison you." So Moses said, "Awalau ji'tuka bi shay'in mubin." How about if I show you a clear sign? قال فأت بها إن كنت من الصادقين. Pharaoh said, "Produce your sign if you are among the truthful." So then he threw his staff, and his staff became a serpent, and he withdrew his hand from his clothing. It's like he has his hand inside his opening in his shirt. He has his hand inside the opening of his shirt, and then he pulled it out, and it was illuminated. And that's in contrast to the dark complexion or darker complexion of Moses. So his hand was illuminated like the full moon, shimmering, very bright. Then he put his hand back, and when he pulled it back out, it was normal again. So two things he did there. According to the story that's in Surat Ash-Shu'ara, Surah Ash-Shu'ara, the poets. So that's what Imam An-Nasafiyy here is talking about. He's bringing reference from another surah when he says, فَذَهَبَ, and so Moses went. فَأَرَى مُوسَى فِرْعَوْنَ الْعَصَى, and then Moses showed Pharaoh the staff. أو العصا واليد البيضاء, or he showed him the staff and the white hand. That's both of those are mentioned in Surah Ash-Shu'ara. So then you might say, well, if the other surah mentions both of them, why would Imam An-Nasafiyy offer one of them? Why would he say Moses showed Pharaoh the staff, or he showed him the staff and the hand? It's in the other surah that he showed him both of them, because the ayah says that one we're explaining now says, فَأَرَاهُ الْآيَةَ الْكُبْرَى. He showed him the great sign, that's singular. The great sign. So if that right there, this ayah that we just read refers to one single thing, then Imam An-Nasafiyy is saying Moses showed Pharaoh the staff. Or if it's not referring to one single thing, then what he showed Pharaoh, was the staff and the white hand, as proven by the other surah. لأنهما في حكم آية واحدة, because both of them are like one sign. فكذب وعصى. فكذب, and so what did Pharaoh do? He belied, he contradicted Moses and denied the great sign. وَسَمَّاهُمَا سَاحِرًا وَسِحْرًا, and he called Moses a wizard, and he called his miracle wizardry. Or he called Moses a magician or sorcerer, and called his miracle magic or sorcery. That's his belying Moses and denying Moses' great sign. وَعَصَى, and he disobeyed Allah, the Pharaoh. Ta'ala. ثُمَّ أَدْبَرَ يَسْعَى, and then he turned away. from Moses. Tawalla an Musa. Yas'a. Striving. Yajtahidu fi mukayadatihi. Putting great effort in fighting against Moses. Yani, Moses left that session safely. Moses and his brother, they got out of that session from the Pharaoh safely, and they regrouped with the children of Israel in Egypt, who were slaves and second-class citizens, if even that. And so Moses then was in Egypt, and the Pharaoh was his enemy. He had a great campaign against Moses. أو لما رأى الثعبان أدبر مرغوبا. Or another way to explain this is ثم أدبر يسعى. Then when he saw the staff turn into a serpent, he turned in flight out of fear. يسعى يسرع في مشيه. Walking away very fast. وَكَانَ طَيَّاشًا خَفِيفًا. And like he's on his tippy toes and stumbling, yani. It's like he's on his tippy toes stumbling. Because that serpent wasn't like in those old movies, just his stick turned into a cobra. It just was bobbing his head and sticking out his tongue. La. That staff turned into a dragon, and it was even hard to look at. It's frightening. When you look at it, it hurts. It's scary. And it had legs. It was very big, and it was fast. So when the Pharaoh saw that, he was horrified. And it was said that he urinated on himself. And it was said that he got sick after that. And that the Pharaoh, he had never been sick before that. The Pharaoh, he lived for 400 years and never got sick. It was said that after he saw that, in this event here, he got sick for the first time. فَحَشَرَ فَنَادَى. And so he gathered his subjects. فَجَمَعَ السَّحَرَةَ وَجُنْدَهُ. He gathered the magicians and his forces. فَنَادَى. And he called out فِي الْمَقَامِ الَّذِي اجْتَمَعُوا فِيهِ مَعَهُ. In the session in which they gathered with him. فَقَالَ أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى. And he said, I am your Lord Most High. لَا رَبَّ فَوْقِي. There's no God over me. وَكَانَتْ لَهُمْ أَصْنَامٌ يَعْبُدُونَهَا. And they had idols that they used to worship. With those idols that they worshipped at the time of Pharaoh, they worshipped those idols to be closer to the Pharaoh. Yani, they used to worship Pharaoh, and they had idols that were like intercessors between themselves and Pharaoh. So he told them, Ana rabbukumul a'la. I am your God, the High One. فَأَخَذَهُ اللَّهُ نَكَالَ الْآخِرَةِ وَالْأُولَى. And so Allah took him with an exemplary punishment for the akhirah and the ula. For the akhirah and the ula. Akhirah means last or end, and ula means first. And so Allah punished him an exemplary punishment for the last and the first. What's that last and what's that first? عَاقَبَهُ اللَّهُ عُقُوبَةَ الْآخِرَةِ. Allah punished him with a punishment of the afterlife. وَالنَّكَالُ بِمَعْنَى التَّنْكِيلِ. يعني with an exemplary punishment. كَالسَّلَامِ بِمَعْنَى التَّسْلِيمِ. That part I don't have to translate. وَنَصْبُهُ عَلَى الْمَصْدَرِ لأن أخذ بمعنى نكل كأنه قيل نكل الله به نكال الآخرة أي الإحراق والأولى أي الإغراق. Okay. So all of what he said right there, I don't have to translate a lot of that. It's just some Arabic stuff and some grammar stuff. But we're trying to get to the bottom of what's the last and what's the first. So according to one way of explaining, فَأَخَذَهُ اللَّهُ نَكَالَ الْآخِرَةِ, and so Allah punished him with the punishment of the akhirah. If akhirah here means the afterlife, the hereafter, then it means burning. وَالْأُولَى, and Allah punished him with the punishment of the ula. If ula here means the present life, then it means drowning. So according to that, it means Allah will punish him in the afterlife with the burning, and he punished him in the present life by drowning. أو نكال كلمتيه الآخرة وهي أنا ربكم الأعلى والأولى وهي ما علمت لكم من إله غيري. Or this verse means that Allah punished him for the last heinous statement that he made, which is this one, when he said, Ana Rabbukumul A'la, I am your Lord Most High. That was his last one. And he said something before that, that was the first one, when he said, Ma alimtu lakum min ilahin ghayri. I do not know for you a God besides myself. So Allah punished him for the latter statement and for the prior statement. وَبَيْنَهُمَا أَرْبَعُونَ سَنَةً أَوْ ثَلَاثُونَ أَوْ عِشْرُونَ. And between those two statements, there were 40 years or 30 years or 20 years. So you may have noticed here when it comes to explaining the Quran that we offer some various explanations. That's because this Quran is not the work of a man. This is the revelation from Allah. The human beings, they got that as conveyed by the messenger, and then what did they do? The people of knowledge sat down and started to decipher it. So while they were deciphering this revelation from God, those people of knowledge, they would say, this ayah means like this, or it could mean like this, or it could mean like this. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَعِبْرَةً لِمَنْ يَخْشَى. Indeed, in what has been mentioned here, in this mentioned story, there is a lesson for whoever fears Allah. أَأَنْتُمْ أَشَدُّ خَلْقًا. Are you, O deniers of resurrection, a more difficult creation? أَصْعَبُ خَلْقًا وَإِنْشَاءً. Is it harder for God to create you? أَمِ السَّمَاء. Or is the sky? Yani, how do you compare yourself, O human, who denies resurrection? You human who denies that you will be reconstructed, reunited with your soul, and brought back to life to be judged for your deeds. You denier of that, what do you reckon? Is creating you more difficult for God than creating the sky? مبتدأ محذوف الخبر أي أم السماء أشد خلقا. And so I already said all of what I just said here, but there's something here that needs to be clarified, which is neither one is more difficult. Neither is more difficult for God. Everything is easy for him. So then what's the meaning of the question? The meaning of the question is for the human being to compare himself to the sky. and to see which is weaker, which is softer, which is smaller. And so this human being, if he deems himself weaker and smaller and softer than the heavens, while God is the one who created the heavens, then based on what would he deny the resurrection of his own body? ثم بين كيف خلقها, and then Allah clarified how he created the heavens. فقال بناها, he said بناها, he built them, or it, the sky. That's singular there, as-sama. He built it. That's literal wording there. Aylah, meaning Allah built the sky, meaning he created it. ثم بين البناء, and then he clarified its building. فقال, and so he said, رفع سمكها, he raised the surface of the sky. He elevated it. أعلى سقفها, he made, yani, because the sky is really something solid. What we see in the daytime is the underside of something solid. When the sun comes out and the daylight makes the sky visible to us, then we see the underside of something solid. And that, so if that's the underside, that means there's an upper side. So that whole thing, Allah raised it up. رفع سمكها أعلى سقفها وقيل جعل مقدار ذهابها في سمت العلو رفيعا مسيرة 500 عام. And it was said that what this means is رفع سمكها means he made the thickness of the sky very thick. يعني, meaning the thickness of it. So let's say, for example, you're standing on a surface, and then right next to you is the sky. Its bottom edge is on the same surface as your feet. So how high is it up? You can look over it with your, or you can just get a ladder and just know. 500 years. So very, very, very high. Or if you want, very thick. This object that's called sama is very thick. 500 years thickness between its upper surface and its lower surface. Allah raised that. فَسَوَّاهَا, and he leveled it. He made it flat. فَعَدَّلَهَا مُسْتَوِيَةً, he evened it out. بِلَا شُكُوقٍ بِلَا شُكُوقٍ وَلَا فُطُورٍ, without having any cracks and without having any crevices. وَأَغْطَشَ لَيْلَهَا, and this sky, he covered its night. He covered the sky's night. What does that mean? أَظْلَمَهُ, it means he made the night dark. وَأَخْرَجَ ضُحَاهَا, and he brought out its duha. He brought out its morning light. أَبْرَزَ ضَوْءَ شَمْسِهَا, he made the sun, the light of the sun, apparent. Though the scholars, they differed, the light of the day, what is that? Is that the sunlight? Or that's an independent body of light? And the sunlight is a different light. The scholars differed. Some said the light of the day, that's by the sunlight. And some said, rather, the light of the day, that's the day. There's a day that's light, and there's a night that's dark. A body of light and a body of darkness. That body of light, that's the day. And the body of darkness, that's the night. And as for the sunlight, that's something else. Here, what did Imam An-Nasafiyy say? وَأَغْطَشَ لَيْلَهَا, about this ayah. He darkened, or he covered the sky's night, meaning أظلمه, he darkened it. وأخرج ضحاها, and he brought out its morning light. أبرز ضوءها, sorry, أبرز ضوء شمسها. It means he made manifest the light of its sun. وأضيف الليل والشمس إلى السماء لأن الليل ظلمتها والشمس سراجها. All right. What's happening in these ayahs is that here Allah is mentioning the sky. رفع سمكها, he raised its thickness. فسواها, so he raised the sky's thickness. فسواها, and then he leveled the sky. Yani ha, that's for the sky. Ha. أأنتم أشد خلقا أم السماء? Are you a more difficult creation, or is the sky? بناها, he built it. Ha, the sky. رفع سمكها, and he raised its thickness, the sky. فسواها, and he leveled it, the sky. وأغطش ليلها, and he covered its night. Yani he covered the sky's night, meaning he darkened it. وأخرج ضحاها, and he brought out the sky's morning light. So all of that has been attributed to the sky. So Imam An-Nasafiyy wants to explain, how is he giving the night to the sky? How is he giving the morning to the sky? وَأُضِيفَ اللَّيْلُ وَالشَّمْسُ إِلَى السَّمَاءِ, so the night is attributed to the sky's night, and the sun, the sky's sun, they are attributed to the sky لِأَنَّ اللَّيْلَ ظُلْمَتُهَا, because the night is the sky's darkness, and the sun is the sky's lantern. وَالْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ دَحَاهَا, and the earth after that, he expanded it. بَسَطَهَا, he expanded it. وَكَانَتْ مَخْلُوقَةً غَيْرَ مَدْحُوَةٍ, it was first created but not expanded, not yet expanded. فدحيت من مكة بعد خلق السماء بألفي عام, and then the earth was expanded from Mecca, yani Mecca being the center point, you might say ground zero. From there, he expanded the earth, stretched it out, yani. So Mecca is the center of the earth. After the creation of the sky by 2,000 years. ثم فسر البسط, and then Allah Ta'ala clarified this expansion. فقال, and so he said, أخرج منها ماءها ومرعاها, he brought out from the earth its water, بتفجير العيون, by making springs burst, and he brought out from the earth its pasture. ولذا لم يدخل العاطف على أخرج. For that reason, there's no conjunction here. It doesn't say وأخرج, and he brought out. No, there's no conjunction there, so to give the meaning of explanation. So وَالْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ دَحَاهَا, and the earth after that, after the creation of the heaven, he expanded it. أخرج منها ماءها ومرعاها, he brought out from it its water and its pasture. أو أخرج حال بإضمار قد, that's fine. وَالْجِبَالَ أَرْسَاهَا أَثْبَتَهَا. And the mountains he anchored them. وانتصاب الأرض والجبال بإضمار دحى وأرسى على شريطة التفسير. يعني that's fine. متاعا لكم ولأنعامكم فعل ذلك تمتيعا لكم ولأنعامكم. He did that for accommodating you and your livestock. He did that to accommodate you humans and to accommodate your livestock. Then after that, the surah goes to talk about Judgment Day. However, looks like we should stop here.